Here it is, the Redmi Note 7 real world review. We're going to see how this thing performs in real life. It's a phone with a lot of hype, a very low price, with some mid-range specs. Right now I've actually switched to the Redmi Note 7 selfie camera. It doesn't look too bad actually. One thing you're going to get with a smartphone is that essentially it's going to be exposed really well because the processor just automatically exposes everything really well, which with my Canon camera is down to me, and I may overexpose or underexpose. So what you get with this camera, I can see maybe the colors are a little bit muted compared with the Canon. Now if I switch to the audio from the phone, then maybe you can just see what the audio is like. Obviously I can't hear it here. With the Canon I'm just using a lapel microphone just to get some better audio. Obviously if you're using the selfie camera from the Redmi Note 7, you'll just be using the phone's audio. It probably doesn't sound as good as the lapel mic, at least it shouldn't anyway. But if we just put the Canon and the Redmi Note 7 side by side, you can just see which one you like better, which one you think is a better image, which one has better colors. And which one picks up good audio. Is it this mic or the mic from the phone? Now, this is on a tripod now, but if I just pick it up and walk around, one thing that you might notice is that the Redmi Note 7 doesn't have image stabilization. So that may be a problem when you're walking around. The Canon camera that I'm just going to compare it to today, actually, the image stabilization isn't really that good either. So they both might not look very good, but it just gives you an idea of how the images are stabilized if you're walking around taking selfies or taking some video, how it's going to look. I can see that my face on the Redmi Note 7 is being beautified a little bit. It's being smoothed out and there's some digital sort of sharpening. I'm now filming on the camera on the Redmi Note 7. The main camera is 48 megapixels. Just see how it looks. Maybe you prefer the colors, maybe you prefer the digital sharpening that the camera is undoubtedly doing. I can't see anything that's going on because obviously using the back camera is facing away from me, but just looking at it, I would say the colors are probably a little bit more vibrant on the back camera as they are to the front camera. The front camera seems a little bit muted in the colors, a little bit cold, whereas the back camera looks really vibrant. You can see maybe in the background some greens and some reds. Just compare it to the Canon and see what you think. Do you like it or do you prefer the Canon camera? Again, if I just walk around here, I hope I am in shot because I can't see anything. I don't know if that camera has optical image stabilization or not. It definitely has electronic image stabilization from the sensor, but I don't know if it has optical image stabilization as well. Also, you can just hear the audio as well. How does the audio sound compared to my microphone? My microphone should sound better than the phone. Wow, so that mic really doesn't sound good on the phone, but it's a little bit of an unfair test. I was using a lapel microphone, which is going to sound better than any other type of microphone in that situation. The mic on the Canon, if I wasn't using that microphone, would sound around about the same as the phone anyway. It was windy and there was a lot of noise from the road as well. So it definitely sounds worse than the lapel microphone, but of course it would. So I don't really give it too many minus points on that one. Let's have a look at some images from the camera. Right, let's have a look at some shots on the Redmi Note 7. I really like this shot. I like the sky, I like the colors in there. I just think it looks really good. But let's put that up against the iPhone. The iPhone is an expensive phone. It costs about 10 times more, roughly, than the Redmi Note 7. But putting two images side by side on here, I can't really tell the difference between them. I actually think that they're really comparable. They look really good. Another shot here, I prefer the iPhone here. The colors on the Redmi Note 7 are decent, but have a look at the trees at the bottom. The Redmi Note 7 is underexposed. It's just too dark and there's not enough detail in there. Another shot, these two are really similar. Again, the Redmi Note 7 is slightly darker than the iPhone. Those colors look a bit richer, but you could say that the image is just a little bit too dark, but it is up to personal choice. Again, these two images, wow, they are so similar. These phones have a price difference of about 10 times. but those images are really comparable. Now look at the 48 megapixel mode. You've got the normal mode on the left and the 48 megapixel mode on the right. You should have cleaner, crisper images from that 48 megapixel mode, but can you see any differences there? Have a look at the exposure on the 48 megapixel mode. Look how dark the shot is. It's just dark. I would say it's underexposed. I can't really see any difference in clarity between them though. Let's zoom in a little bit. Can you see any difference in clarity between the Note 7 and the 48 megapixel Pro mode? I would say these two shots are really similar. There's absolutely no difference. This is zoomed in 450 times. There's really no difference between them. I can't see any difference in the clarity between these two modes. Let's try a different shot. Let's zoom right in on that detail up there. Now, this is clear as day. Can you see any difference between the 48 megapixel mode and the Redmi Note 7 normal mode? I personally cannot. Now, the Redmi Note 7 doesn't have optical image stabilization. I just looked it up, which means going down these stairs is probably going to be a shaky mess, and you probably won't be able to use the footage. Now, you can't really compare it against an iPhone because that's 10 times more expensive, but you can just see with stabilized footage that the video you take is way more usable. So I probably couldn't use the Redmi Note footage because it's too shaky, but the iPhone footage is absolutely fine. As I said, you can't really compare the two because there's a 10 times price difference in this. But maybe seeing them side by side will give you just a little bit of insight into if you want to buy the Redmi Note 7, if you think that actually the footage isn't that bad, and for the price it's really decent. But I can definitely see on both phones, testing them side by side, that the iPhone footage looks like it's on a gimbal. It's totally smooth, whereas the footage on the Redmi Note 7 is way more shaky. Now, they say that they have EIS in the Redmi Note 7, which is electronic image stabilization. Basically, the processor tries to stabilize the image. You can see the difference between them and see if it makes a big difference for you. Unbelievable. Now, I can tell you when I was filming those two, the footage on the Redmi Note 7 looked absolutely awful. The footage on the Redmi Note 7 when you're filming is so shaky, it just looks totally unusable. When I was going down the stairs, when I was walking around, just looking at the back of the phones, the footage on the Redmi Note 7, I just thought there's no way I can use that in the video. It's terrible. The footage on the iPhone looked so smooth, so buttery smooth. Now, the difference is the iPhone has optical image stabilization, so the actual camera unit moves around. Whereas on the Redmi Note 7, they're using electronic image stabilization. Basically, the Snapdragon 660 is smoothing out that image digitally. Obviously, it can't do it in real time, which is why it looks so shaky when you're taking the footage. But just look at that footage. It is incredible. Go back, rewind, and watch it again. The iPhone, $1,000 phone, and the Redmi Note 7, 150 bucks. Unbelievably similar. Crazy. Blew my mind watching that back. Incredible. One thing I would say about the Redmi Note 7 camera though is that it's always underexposed. The images just are too dark. Now, that serves to make the colors a bit more punchy and a bit richer, but the image is just too dark. It's underexposed. It needs to dial up that exposure a bit. Everything is just too dark and it's not exposed properly. So that is a problem. But just looking at the quality in the images between the two, it's amazing how similar they are. Also, the audio on the iPhone is just pure hot trash. I don't know why it's so bad. I think the bottom of the phone was facing the road, so it had some problems. But the audio on the Redmi Note 7 was pretty good in this instance. All right, let's have a look at the selfie camera on this versus the iPhone. All right, so this is the iPhone 10 just against the Redmi Note 7. Look how bright and how overexposed the Redmi Note 7 is. Now, this is a Chinese phone, and Chinese consumers like to take selfies that have very bright exposure, and they like the camera to whiten and brighten their skin. Obviously, I do not need that The Redmi Note 7 makes me look like a ghost. I am so incredibly white and pale, so I definitely prefer the iPhone X's selfie camera. Night mode on this. Wow. This is against a Canon camera, a DSLR expensive Canon camera with a big lens versus a $150 Redmi Note 7. I prefer the Redmi Note 7. I think the Note 7 actually has more detail in the image. Let's zoom right in on that sign. This is a dedicated camera versus a camera phone. Really similar. Right, have a look at this. I'm going to do a test here. I'm not going to tell you which camera took this shot, but it's either the Redmi Note 7 or the Canon camera. And let's switch to camera number 2. This is either the Redmi Note 7 or the Canon camera. So those two cameras are together and you can guess which one is which. The first one was the Redmi Note 7 and the second image was the Canon camera. I would say colors are a little bit more vibrant on the Note 7. The Canon cameras are probably more true to life, but those Redmi Note 7 colors just seem to be really saturated, which is a setting you can play with on the Canon camera, but that's just exactly how it comes out of the Redmi Note 7. This is the Note 7 versus the iPhone X. Really similar shots here. I could not choose between these two. The colors are great on both. The exposure is a little bit different, but in terms of clarity and overall picture, I really like them both. Let's do the Redmi Note 7 versus 48 megapixel mode on the right. Have a look at 48 megapixel mode. Again, it just seems to underexpose the image. The image is too dark, whereas the Note 7 on the left there seems to have about the right exposure on the image. But is there any difference in clarity? Let's zoom right in on those flowers. The colors are different. The exposure is different. The 48 megapixel mode is dark. The Note 7 normal mode is a bit lighter, but I personally cannot see any difference in clarity between those two modes. One thing I will say about the camera is that because there's no image stabilization on there, sometimes when you're trying to take a picture quickly and the phone's moving around, you can get some blurring in the image, which isn't really that great, so you have to retake the photo. Sometimes when you're trying to take an image quickly, and you don't have much time to take it, you only get one shot, and if you're having a blurred image, then you didn't get your shot. Although I am nitpicking a little bit, to be honest, all in all, for the price, I've got to say that camera really does hold up well.